and I was so nervous. I couldn't get the thing open, so that's why I needed Mark's help. This morning, thank you, Scott. Sorry. Thank you, Scott. I'm so nervous. Stop it. For the songs today and the way you led the worship. It was so fitting, and it's actually helped me change some of what I'm going to say. So you'll bear with me because that bit I haven't got written down. As you know, we are continuing with the Sermon on the Mount, and we have been doing all the Beatitudes. So we're getting through all these blesseds, and we're now on the one which is, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. But before I go to that, I want to say something else, and it's about Mother's Day. I'm sure everybody is aware, whether you're a mother or not, everything is about Mother's Day, and I'm sure by the end of today, it will be all about Easter, because that's what the commercial world does. It moves on to the next thing very quickly. And as Linda said, Mother's Day is a fantastic time. It's good to celebrate being a mother. But there's always a flip side to this, isn't there? And for Mother's Day, Father's Day, Uncle Tom Cobley's day as well, whatever day, there's people that will be very happy and everything's going really well for them, and there's others that it's a very painful time. And it could be that you are a young person and you want to have a family. Your desire is, you love kids, you want to have a family, but it hasn't happened yet. You can be married and you can be wanting a family, and it hasn't happened yet. You can be a woman who has had to give up a child. And maybe you've given away a child for whatever reason. That's entirely nothing to do with me. It could be that you've lost a child, whether they're 6 or they're 60. You can lose somebody that's your daughter, your son, and that is reminded, these days can remind you of all of that. You can also have missed your mum. You could be, actually, however long, I mean, my mum's been dead about 10 years now, but I still miss her because she was my best friend. I could tell her everything and anything, knowing that nobody else would know about it. I know she'd always be proud of me, even when I made my mistakes. She believed in me. And suddenly that person's not there anymore. And nobody really fills that place of people that we can have second mums and all sorts of things, but nobody really changes that relationship. And what can happen, and I'm speaking from experience now, it would be good if I got this up the right way. I can do this, John, don't worry, I can do it. Oh, there we go. What can happen is it can become painful, and coming to church can be really difficult because everybody's nice to you. And they see you and say, oh, bless you, dear, and all this sort of thing. And it just reminds you, again, of the situation you can find yourself in. And if you're like me, you get to the door and you think, just put a mask on. And when somebody's asked you how you are, oh, great, thanks very much, everything's fine. How are you? Tell me how your week's been. And you deflect everything to protect yourself. And bit by bit, what you're doing is building a wall. And bit by bit, this wall gets built brick by brick by brick, depending on how painful it is and how long it is and all sorts of circumstances that come with it. And I've put Battersea Town Station up because I used to go on the train past it every day for about 20 odd years, and it fascinated me as a building. I believe it's all been renovated, and apparently it's a very trendy place to be now. But in my day, it wasn't. It was just there. But the thing, it's always stayed in my mind on occasions when I've had to find a way of breaking down the walls that I've built, whether it's to do with Mother's Day or to do with something else, just life, things that happen in our lives and the experiences that we go through. Because it ends up like this chimney, and you can't see over the chimney because you've built too many bricks around you. And then what can happen is you can have steam or smoke coming out the chimney, which is the anger, the frustration, the hurt, the pain, the disappointment, all that stuff. And then after a bit, you just become numb. And it just all closes off. And it just becomes stagnant, and it just sits there. And you need to be in the place where you can break the walls down. And I'm so encouraged by what was being sung today, because it's Jesus that breaks down the walls, but he gets you to help him do that. And a few weeks ago, Sarah was doing the praise and worship, and she was doing that song, Jesus in your street, Jesus in your family, all that kind of thing. You know the song. I'm not going to sing it. You're okay. But we sang that song, and she stopped, and she said, we have enemies. We have enemies. Sometimes the enemy can be depression. It can be anxiety. It can be hurt. It's all those things. It's not just a matter of, and she chose something about, bopping somebody on the nose. It's not just about that. It's about our emotions and the way that we live that can be our enemy. And we only have Jesus that can answer that. And following on from that, Laura McCall said something, and the bit that I remembered very clearly was she said, I can be there to help you, I can support you, we're all here to be around you, but it's Jesus that makes the difference. It's Jesus that you need to know to be able to move on and find God and break down the walls. And I'm hoping this will tie in with what I'm going to say about the peacemakers. So we're going to move on to that. So my first question, well, there's several questions I've got here. Oh, no, I've gone too far. Back one? Yes. How's your transformation going? We've been doing this now for weeks. How are you getting on with it? Are you enjoying it? How much transformation? Do you know what transformation actually is? What is it? How much transformation? I was going to be one of those transformers, that comes, this gadget that once it's a car and then you change it and it's a little monster or something. But I've got one. So what is it? What's going on? How is it working out for you? Are you enjoying it? Do you know what you're being transformed from to? Do you want to be transformed? I was talking to David Stirrett one week outside when the side started, and he says, well, how's your transformation going? So I said, well, Dave, and we'd been talking about what's going on in Linda and Dave's life and what was going on in ours. And I said, well, do you know what, Dave? Do you ever get to the point you think to yourself, you pray, Lord, do you know what? Do you mind just going and transforming Elaine and that over there and giving me a break? Because it really feels like, how much more transformation? Am I really that bad? Do I really need that much transformation? But we know, don't we, that actually we're all being transformed into the likeness of God, and that will take a lifetime and more. But what is it to you? Do you come on a Sunday from the beginning, to the first one that Chris did at the beginning, and think, oh, right, so we're doing this one. Blessed is the meek, blessed are the mourn. And you tick it off, and you go home and think, oh, that was good. Yeah, you did a good sermon that way. I might even email in and tell him he did a good job. And it really inspired me. Yes, it inspired me. I've ticked that one off. Move on to the next one. Oh, it's about mourning. Oh, yes, I remember Richard de Kooning saying it's the cost involved. Yes, that's true. Yeah, oh, I've done that one. And we can move. Because we're doing it weekly, it can become like, oh, this is what we're doing this week. This is what we're doing this week. Get to the end. Oh, good, we've done the blesseds, and now we're moving on to the next bit. But actually, all of it comes together, doesn't it? It's a growing organism thing. It's just all merging and moving all the time. And it's not necessarily that's the bit you move, because as soon as you say you're not proud anymore, then you're being proud. So you can't do it that way, can you? It's an ongoing process. Now, I have a bit of a confession. When Chris asked us or suggested that we read some of those books that he told us, I thought, right, I must do this, must do a good thing. So what I did was I ordered on Audible the one about the conspiracy theory. And the problem I had was the man had a really nice voice. And every time I sat and listened to it, I fell asleep. And I don't sleep during the day. And I'm thinking, I can't get this. So anything that was subconsciously remembered will come out. But I just couldn't keep it on. So I thought, well, I can't do that again. So I bought the R.T. Kendall one, and I've read it. And so that's the one that I'm going to be referring to in when I'm talking, because it's the one that I can remember. Anyway, this is what R.T. Kendall says. The purpose of the Sermon on the Mount is to demonstrate the kind of teaching and the kind of living with regard to character and conduct that should govern the people of God through the power of the Holy Spirit. And when I was looking at all this, I thought, what am I going to do? And I was thinking about all these different people that are peacemakers, and I looked people up. And I kept coming back over and thinking, but at the end of the day, Jesus was the best peacemaker. So why not on him? And then I thought, well, we all know about that, so maybe I should choose somebody different. So I went back thinking again, who should I go? And every time I've come back to Jesus, and with the songs that Scott used today, I think that is definitely the one that I should be using. The Beatitudes are what we are to become. And it's like our Heavenly Father. It's not just about obedience. It's about living, it's about becoming, and it's serving those around us. And it's really interesting because in my daily reading app thing, the thing that came up the other day was, has my faith drifted into learning about Jesus instead of receiving life from him? And you know, it really struck me. I thought, I get quite curious about, I wonder what happened with this. And I try and visualize, I wonder what happened when the lady went. What did she think when she went home? How was she thinking about what's happened to her? But I can get caught up in all that rather than actually, well, Jesus, what are you thinking about with me? What are you doing for me? And how are you going to help me become more like you? And it was this, Catherine lent me a book by Nicky Gumbel, A Challenging Lifestyle. And in this it says, the Greek word, we're getting into this Hebrew and Greek, aren't we? The Greek word for blessed conveys the idea of happiness, but it means so much more. Happiness is a subjective feeling. The word used by Jesus means blessed by God or receiving God's favor. And the Amplified Version translates it, happy to be envied and spiritually prosperous, that is with life, with joy and satisfaction, regardless of the outward condition. Jesus is telling his disciples how they can live their life under God's blessing. And when you go back through those Beatitudes, you can think, well, I do fail with being proud, or I do find this bit difficult, whatever. It's not about what is going on externally in our lives. It's what is God changing in us? What is the difference he's making to give us life? Because he said he'll bless us. He does bless us. But sometimes we can miss the blessing because we're so caught up in, well, he hasn't answered this prayer. He hasn't changed this mind. I'm still stuck in this situation. Rather than seeing, but even regardless of that, he blesses our lives every day. At the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus answers the question, what sort of people we should be. And he describes it in 8 steps. Now, when I was looking at this, blessed are the peacemakers, the thing that puzzled me to start with was he says, if you're a peacemaker, then you will be a child of God. And my thinking was, well, I thought I was a child of God because I believe that Jesus came to earth. I believe he lived on the earth. I believe he died. And in dying, he made reconciliation for me with God. And then he rose again, defeating death. He went back to live in heaven, sitting by the Father, praying for me. And one day I'll either go to be with him or he will come back for me. And therefore, that's the gospel, and that is what I am, a child of God. So then I thought, so does that make me a peacemaker? And if it does, have I got the skills? And am I being one? So it all started to think, what is it? What is a peace? What really is a peacemaker? And in this bit, what this says is that 8 steps to find the character that we should have. The first 4 steps, the first 4 Beatitudes, is about relationship with God. And the second 4 are about a relationship with others. We can't get away from the fact, if you're in relationship with God, you're supposed to be in relationship with others, including those you don't particularly like. Have anybody seen the film Miss Congeniality? It's a rom-com. Sandra Bullock, she works for the FBI, and she goes undercover with the beauty pageant, and she is to try to unravel this crime. And the bit I'm taking is because everybody's interviewed, all these beautiful women trot out, and they're all being interviewed as to what they would do if they were Miss United States. And everybody ends their interview with, and I believe in world peace. Or I want to work for world peace. It's all about world peace. And so we can sort around thinking, oh yes, I want to be world peace. And we're thinking that's being a peacemaker. You get people that are doing a lot of good. The Nobel Peace Prize that's given out to people who have made incredible contributions in society towards peace. Have you ever been in the car with your spouse or a family member, or you've gone with a friend and you've gone to life group maybe, or coming to church, you might be going to a work situation, you might be going to a family thing, and one of you says to the other, no, look, just keep the peace. Don't let's get on to whatever it is. Just keep your mouth shut, just go nice, just ignore it, just keep the peace. And that is a peacekeeper. It is not the same as a peacemaker. But sometimes we can think, well, I am, because I'm keep the peace, keeping everybody happy. But what that is a peacekeeper is tasked to keep external peace. It's just keeping it all on the perimeter, just keeping everybody calm. So what is a peacemaker? The word peacemaker is only used once in the Bible, And the Hebrew this time means bravely declares God's terms which make someone whole. And you know, when I read this, that just clinched it for me, because I thought at the end of the day, the tower at the beginning, whatever that building is, whether it's something like we've been talking about in the songs we've been singing about, letting God break into your life, letting go, releasing things, all of that stuff, it comes. Why? Why do we do it? It's because we want to be whole. So if we're going to be whole, then it's the essential parts are all joined together. It's God's gift of wholeness. Therefore, a peacemaker bravely declares God's word so that people can be made whole. For example, reconciled to God. Jesus sees peacemaker as one of the characteristics in his children. So our job and our role is to, one, to be whole ourselves, and also then to go out and share with others what it is to know Jesus. It's important to remember that peace in the Bible is always based on justice and righteousness. And at the come to the table the other week, we talked about righteousness and justice. Linda talked about righteousness earlier in the month. So it's there. It's in the Beatitudes. And if you don't have those bits in place, then you will find it difficult to be a peacemaker. Where justice and righteousness rules, then you will find peace. But without those two things, you will never have lasting peace, because it's not possible. Because a peacemaker is primarily concerned with the internal peace of somebody. The word peace is used 92 times. It's used as greetings, hello, goodbye, within the Jewish communities, even today. And Jesus talked a lot about peace, didn't he? He said, my peace I give you. Things like that. So it's in the Bible. It's around us all the time, but peacemaker is only used once. A peacemaker lives free from rage, living in harmony. Now, harmony is different from just getting on with people. Harmony is about different sounds that come together, don't they? Now, Fiona Taylor and I have joined an a cappella group. And there's 10 of us, 10 women in this group, all different ages, and we've come from all different backgrounds, and it's music songs without words, music, talk about words, without music. And when we started, there's 10 of us, we got together, it was quite funny because it was all a bit strange, because none of us could get it right. But we're getting better. We're not at the Eden Court standard yet, but we're making it, we're getting there. But it's about the music coming together. It's the harmony. It's 4 different sounds that come in together that sounds beautiful. And that's what the peacemaker is. It's bringing things together. It's not changing somebody. It's not changing their circumstances necessarily. It's getting alongside of them and working with them to help them, enable them to be in harmony. And we have to be in harmony with them too. It needs to flow together. It's about building people up. It's praying for those that are hurting, walking alongside them, which can be quite a long time. So if you commit yourself to pray for somebody, don't just think, I'll pray for you this week and that's it, we're all sorted. Because in some situations, for some people, they will need you to be there for a long time. You're in for the long haul. But that is helping them to break down the barriers, find healing, finding restoration, and then being able to become a peacemaker for themselves. Peacemakers work for security and happiness in others who are suffering. Peace is not something you hope for, it's something you work for. So there's no point sitting there, please God, let me be a peacemaker. What he's saying is, I've given you the tools, I've told you the Beatitudes, I've asked you to put those into your life. Make them part of your life, and in doing so, you will become a peacemaker. And I'm looking forward to seeing it, because it's one of the characteristics I expect of you. That's Jesus saying that, not me. Peace comes from talking and listening. Communication is a great key part of all of this, isn't it? And sometimes that's not easy for people. Have you ever been with somebody, you're talking to them and you realise they're already switched off and they're looking for the next person they can talk to, and you're still thinking, I've just got to the important bit, and they've moved on, or they're still with you, but you can see it in their faces, they've totally switched off, and you're suddenly trying to wrap this story up because you suddenly feel very embarrassed. That's not a peacemaker. A peacemaker is sitting there and saying, come on, tell me your story. Tell me what it is. And when you tell me the bits that are a bit dramatic, I won't go, oh, my goodness me. I'll just sit there and go, okay, that's fine. What else have you got to say? Let me hear it all, because you can't be in a place of judgment. You have to be neutral. It means you don't take any sides. You have to be totally neutral and yet on both sides. And I looked up this, it was a rabbi, and he was talking about peacemakers. And I thought it'd be interesting to see what they think of it. And he gave the example of Aaron when he was in the wilderness with Moses even, and the Israelites. And he was seen, and is still recognized within the Orthodox Jewish communities, as being a peacemaker. And that was because he would go, if there was a family in dispute, he would go and he would work with that family till they found answers to the situations they were in. And often, apparently in the genealogies of these people, there is often an Aaron, that's a new baby's born, they call him after Aaron, because they appreciated how much that he had input into their lives of that particular family. And there's another story that this rabbi told, and he did say, by the way, this is not down in scripture, this is their folklore. But he said there's another one where Aaron would go to one man who was arguing with this other man, and he would listen to him and talk to him and say, okay, and spend a lot of time with him. Then he'd go and see the other one and talk to him and listen to him. And then he'd say to one, do you know, so let's say Mike and Gavin, Mike, do you know what? Gavin's really upset about what's happened and he wants to make up with you. He'd say to Gavin, do you know what? Mike's really upset about this. You need to go make up. And so when they came together from a place of wanting to reconcile and move forward. And that is what it's about. It's about seeing a situation and think, you know, I could help in this situation, but you don't take sides. It can't be, well, I know, Leanne, you're right. You must be right. It's that Richard Syrett again, isn't it? I know. It's just, I know what it's like. But it's not about that. It's about, Leanne, you tell me what the problem is with Richard Syrett. You tell me what's going on for you. Okay, all right then, let's see what he has to say. And then what is going on? What do you understand about the circumstances and the situations of people? Which goes back to the chimney. Because if you've been in a situation where you're hurt or angry or frustrated, whatever, and you're in a chimney, then your response and reaction to something can be not very good. But if I understand some of that chimney, then I can understand, well, let's get the chimney down. And once we've opened up that and broken that down, then I've got you as who you are, so let's see how we can move this forward and find healing. When we think about Jesus, he was the best peacemaker that ever lived. What did he do? By giving up his son, by God giving up his son, Jesus, to bring peace between himself and us, God is the best example of the one who paid the costly price for peace. God is the author of peace. He established peace. His message explains peace. His death purchased peace. And his resurrected presence enables peace. The predictions of his birth were that he would be the Prince of Peace in Isaiah 9. Jesus' persistent word to sinners was, go in peace. He didn't go, well, now you've done all that sin, I've forgiven you, but go on and get it. He says, go in peace. It's forgotten. It's forgiven. I've forgiven you. And as Laura said this morning about Jesus is not too busy for you. He's there for you. He's there for you now. He's not too busy. And he's saying, I'm not worrying about all the other stuff. Just come and let's talk about it and let's work together to sort things out. Just before he was crucified, Jesus said to his disciples, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. And when he returned after the resurrection, his first word to the disciples was shalom, peace to you. He didn't go on about, oh, hello, how are you going? How's it going? Should we have breakfast? That was later. But he wanted to say peace to you. That is the most important thing. Life with Jesus, with his mission, was to bring peace of God and initiate healing. Relationships of peace with God. He paid an enormous price for us to experience peace. And now it's our job to introduce others to Jesus who can experience it too. The vision for the church that Chris and Sarah and their leadership brought back at the beginning of the year, and I've got it up, I want to read this verse again, I'm not sure it's that clear, but I'll read it. It says, for I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. And then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did I see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go and visit you?" And the king replied, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers or sisters of mine, you did it for me." And I believe that when we take action like that and we do this, we are being peacemakers. Because a peacemaker is not just about peace among us. Well, it is that, but it's not just that. It's about the people outside. And when you think about what's going on outside, whether it's in a political situation or a social situation or an education, all the different areas of life, if ever we've needed peace, it's now. And who's going to bring it? It's not going to be the peacekeepers, because that will never last. It has got to be us in the way that we live our lives and what we do and what we say and how we respond to people. Because if we don't do it, then nobody else will do it. And I think that's what's so key about the vision that we've got. If ever we as a church are in such a good place, because I believe that what we've been given to do is so in keeping with God's heart. Funnily enough, I had two separate people speak to me, not from this church, two different individuals speak to me to say that their lunch clubs that they go to have closed down. And did I know anything about one in Kings? See? So I said, well, we don't, but I told them about our afternoon tea. But it made me realise how much Kings does for people in our community. And we might think, well, it's all about the community, not about us in the church. But with all due respect, if you've been saved and you know Jesus and you sing these songs and you love him, then it's not about you. It's about what you're doing with that. One of the songs that Scott sang, it said about, I've forgotten it, but you know the songs we sang. But what I'm trying to say is, we sing it, we live it, we can cuddle each other, we can hug each other, all of that stuff. But at the end of the time, the people that we mix with out in Tesco's, in our works, in our schools, and everywhere we go, are going to hell if we don't tell them and help them to find peace. And so, basically, look at these Beatitudes, try and initiate them in your life, grow up a little bit, and start looking outside. Because that's what's going to make the difference. And I think that is what our leadership are trying to get over when they've asked us to sign up to these verses in the Bible. They're wanting us to say, look, we can put these things on, but you need to bring the people to see it. And what I want to say to you is, so what do you do? When you go on your shop, when you go into Tesco's, what do? You see somebody that they're having a bit of maybe they've got a child that's having a tantrum. What do? Do you think, dear, oh dear, not very good parenting, and walk on? Do you come and say, can I help you? Do you think, oh dear, time to go down the other aisle? Or do you just walk by and say, hi, I know how it feels, you'll be fine, don't worry about it, or whatever, you might say something else. I know a situation where a lady was chatting to a girl in Tesco's one morning, and this woman said, it's a year ago next week that my husband died. And she said, but Tesco's has been very good to us in looking after me as an employee and has given me times I can do shifts to help me continue working. And this lady spoke to this woman and went on her way and said to her husband afterwards, she said, I'm going to do next week. I'm going to put it in my diary. Next week, I want to go up to Tesco's on that particular day because I want to get that. If that cashier is in, I'm going to buy her some flowers. And she did. She went up, didn't buy a lot of expensive bunch of flowers. It wasn't the best Tesco's finest. But they bought some flowers. And she went over to the lady and she said, you won't remember me, but you told me last week that your husband, it was a year ago for the anniversary, that your husband died. And I'd just like to give you these flowers, just to let you know I've been praying for you. And the cashier was a bit nervous of it. She didn't know quite what to do. And another cashier came over. She said, oh, you should take this. She said, that lady's been really kind to you. And the lady said, I'm just praying for you because I know you've been in a painful situation. And it's just to let you know somebody has thought about you. I believe that's been a peacemaker because they've looked at the situation, not known, and went in and did something. Have you ever been in Dobies and you're having a cup of tea and you see an older person and they're trying to struggle to put their tray back, but they're trying to carry their Zimmer at the same time? Have you ever thought, instead of going on your phone when you get up, I'm just going to go over and take that tray. So would you like me to take that for you? And put it away. It's a simple thing, but it can mean the world to somebody. Have you ever thought when you see somebody, an older lady or young gentleman, you say, oh, hello, you're looking very handsome today, or you look beautiful, your hair's lovely, oh, you look very nice. I just thought I'd tell you that as you walk on. Now, they might think you're a bit odd, but it's about sharing something of yourself. And this situation I want to tell you is about Richard when he was teaching down in secondary school. And he had this boy called Remy, who's now in his late 40s, which still has contact with him, now got his own family. But this particular, he was about 14, 15, and he came flying into the class late, and he was shouting and really having a go at Richard. And he's so Richard said, right, Remy, go and sit in my cupboard, and I'll talk to you in a minute. Set the class to work, went and sat and said, right, tell me what's going on. Just tell me what's going on. And after putting his fist through the wall, because he was so angry, Richard said, well, this wasn't my face, so now tell me what is going on. And what came out was the boy said, I've just come out of home and my mum and dad have said they're divorcing and it's all because of me. He said, and they've had enough, they're sick, and they've said they either throw me out or they're divorcing. They can't take it anymore. And the story unraveled and Richard just listened to him. So at the end of the conversation, he turns around and he says, right, so I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to send you home. I'm going to give you some, when was the last time you bought your mum some flowers? I've never bought my mum some flowers. Well, it's about time that changed. He said, I'm going to give you some money. I'm going to send you home. Go and get some flowers on the way. And I want you to go to your mum and say to her, Mum, can you tell me what I've done that's made things so bad? Can you help me how can I change things? I don't want this family to separate. And if it's my part is really part of that, then what can I do to change? What can be different? Because I love my mum and dad. So Remy said, well, I've never said I love my mum. He says, it's the time you changed it, off you go. Now, at that time in school down south, you couldn't, if in secondary school, once you were in school at 9 o'clock, you weren't allowed out till the end of the day. You couldn't go home at lunchtimes and stuff. You stayed in school. So off he went. And Richard said, the only thing I want is for you to make sure you're back before the end of the day, because obviously he was responsible for letting him out. Day goes on, the boy comes running back in, late to another lesson, comes in, and he says, you'll never guess what? He said, I got home, he said, and my mum and my dad were still there, and they were still arguing. And they said, what are you here for? And he said, Mum, here's your flowers. He said, I do love you. He said, I sat down and we talked about it. He said, and I said, what can I do? And the mum and dad said, well, actually, it's not all your fault. It's, there's lots more to it, but you're a good part of it. And they talked about it. And he said, but I don't want this time. I really love you, Mum. And I really love you, Dad. And I want to make sure that the relationship is good. And that as a family, we're together. And it is, as far as I know from the last message we got, the family is still together. All the other parents' evenings from then on, they were always the last one to go to parents' evening because they came as a family. Because they saw that reconciliation, he had helped to bring that to happen. The reconciliation came from the family, but he was the tool, if you like, to make that happen. And that in workplaces, you see situations arise and you think, what is it? What is going on behind the behavior of that person? What is it that's really happening? And once you find that out, then you're in a place you can help. This guy called Clyde Narramore says, every person is worth understanding. To understand is often to forgive. And sometimes we can understand something, but we need to forgive the person or enable the person to forgive themselves or to forgive other people. In Ephesians 4, and this is in the Message, I don't want any of you sitting around on your hands. I don't want anyone strolling off down some path that goes nowhere. And mark that you do this with humility and discipleship, not in fits and starts, but steadily pouring yourselves out for each other in acts of love, alert at noticing the differences and quick at mending fences. And it's about that, isn't it? You can see something or a situation and you can leave and think, oh, I'll worry about it later, I'm too busy. As Catherine said, we can be too busy. But sometimes it's saying, actually, if I just go and try and do something now with this situation, maybe that will nip it in the bud and it will stop it from escalating. And there's so many practical things we can do. Now we've got like texting and all this kind of thing. You don't have to write a card and post it and spend time. You can send somebody a text and say, I was thinking about you this morning. I've been praying for you because I don't know what's going on. I don't necessarily need to know the facts. All I need you to know is I'm thinking about you and I haven't forgotten you. And then if the person comes back, you can start to bring peace. It's about listening first, seeking to understand, open to reason, but not willing to swerve from God's truth and the gospel. And that is a really important thing, because some situations we can come across is we're not used to it. It's an experience we've never had before. It may be that we think it's not right from a biblical point of view or whatever. But that's not our place to judge the person. Our place is to listen to what they're saying and why they're saying it. What is behind it? And then by leading them to Jesus, we allow Jesus to make the changes. but we don't swerve from the gospel. We can say, I've got a situation with a friend of mine, and I can say to them, I don't agree with the way that you live your life or the way that you behave, but because in my life, and I can say that from my experience, what I believe is right. However, that doesn't stop me caring about you as an individual, and I will talk to you and be with you and support you, but don't forget that this is my stance on it. So you can make clear what you believe to be right, but it doesn't mean that you judge the person for the way where they are in their lives. Jesus knew that when people start speaking the truth, healing and support and hope can lead to internal peace. And I think that goes back to all that's been said already, is the fact that you've got to speak the truth. You've got to get to the stage, you're breaking down the wall, whether it's about Mother's Day or any other day. You've got to be able to come to a place where you can be true to yourself, true to other people that you care about, and true to God. You've got to be honest and say, do you know, this is really what I'm thinking. Not the polite way of saying it, but this is really where I'm at. And when you're able to get to that point, that's when I believe that God steps in and changes things, because you're being honest, and that's what can bring about internal peace and healing. In closing, in James 3, there's 9 traits of a peacemaker. Moral purity, being peaceable, gentleness, fruit of the Spirit, one of the fruits of the Spirit, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. And all of those things are in the Beatitudes. And so it comes back to understanding what the Beatitudes are all about, thinking about it. When people have been preparing this, they spend time preparing this to help you and to help themselves find more about Jesus. That's what it's all about. But we can't, as Laura said at that time a few weeks ago, we can't be the ones that change it for you. We can help you, we can encourage you, we can walk with you. But at the end of the day, you are responsible for breaking down your walls. And in doing so, you will have freedom. You will be free. It may take time, you will get freedom. And in doing that, then you can help other people, because you understand where they're at. You have a much better understanding when you've been somewhere yourself to where somebody else has got to be. Without sincere devotion to God, we will be partial and we'll be unable to maintain peace. When we are right with God, then we're in a position to help other people. We have to be willing to be patient, go the extra mile, and growing from the gospel, led by the Spirit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz. It was number 1 on our vision for the year.